Here's something to think about the next time you board a plane. Flight attendants are typically only paid once the plane is in motion. That means any help with boarding checks, safety checks, and yes, sitting on the tarmac is generally unpaid work. The airline division of CUPE says that adds up to Canadian flight attendants working an average of 35 hours a month unpaid. The union representing airline workers in Canada is now calling on the government to close a loophole on unpaid work. Rina Kisvalvi is the secretary-treasurer for CUPE's airline division, and she's joining us from Winnipeg this morning. Welcome.
Thank you for having me, Anne-Marie. Good morning.
So calls for reform began months before the petition arrived in the House of Commons. So how did this campaign start?
Well, post-pandemic, we had quite a few concerns coming from our members regarding compensation. What most of Canadians don't know and the government is not really aware of is that flight attendants are not compensated pre and post flight. So we went ahead and launched a campaign. 9 airline division presidents were part of a council that meet quarterly, and we launched the campaign. And we felt it necessary that the government and the Canadian traveling public understand that the flight attendant is just not a customer service role, it's safety sensitive in nature.
And so just to be clear, you know, when they're arriving, when they're boarding, when they're helping people put their suitcases up, when they're doing sort of the flight safety checks, all of that's unpaid?
Correct.
And the pay clock starts when?
When I arrive at the gate.
So when
I arrive at the gate, which is about an hour prior to departure. Most times it's an hour to almost 2 hours. Flight attendants are required to report for duty, and that isn't paid.
How are flight attendants in the U.S. compensated differently than here in Canada?
I can't speak to them specifically and specifically how they're paid. However, it is our compensation structure is similar in nature. One, of course, I can't speak to. I can speak to the Canadians and how our pay structure is, but it's not just a Canadian problem. It's not just a North American problem. It's a global problem. And flight attendants globally are paid and compensated similarly.
The federal government has until November the 5th, I understand, to respond. What happens if they don't respond to this petition by that deadline? And what changes are you looking to see from Ottawa?
Well, we're really interested to see what their response is going to be. It is a antiquated compensation system that we've drawn attention to, that the government has to address through the Canada Labour Code, and it doesn't have a place here in 2023. So we will be sitting back, waiting with bated breath to see what their response is going to be. We have a campaign and a budget that allows us to continue doing this for the next 5 years, and we are going to be drawing attention to the response, and we will take action after that.
You know, I was one of many Canadians who was surprised to learn about the duties that were considered, that fall under this unpaid loophole. I'm curious, this has been going on, I think, what I have read, at least in the campaign, for a few decades now, at least 7 decades. So they've had contracts that they've signed off on before. Why is this not something that was brought to the attention in previous contracts or negotiations?
Well, what we're told when we're hired is this is the industry practice. This has always been the way. Historically, this is how flight attendants are paid. And there is a certain amount of acceptance with that because you're so excited to be in the air and traveling. It's an exciting industry. Travel is always exciting, of course. However, you know, when you start to understand and take a look at your paycheck, you realize that you're not compensated for the time that you're at work. And while we accepted it for those decades, and Anne-Marie, it's been going on for 7 decades. And that practice and the antiquated compensation system has to change. And we're drawing attention to that compensation system now. And government officials and the traveling public, Canadians and North Americans, need to recognize that flight attendants need to be paid for the time at work.
Rina, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you liked this, be sure to subscribe here, or you can check out more Your Morning videos right here.